Okay, I guess everyone in this room has heard this. What's the most important aspect for the success of a startup? And also one of the main aspects investors look at, right, the team. And this is what we are going to talk about today. Me, editor at Gründerszene, and Christian Henschel, founder of Berlin-based startup Adjust. Your startup was introduced already, but just some quick numbers. The tools you develop are implemented in 25,000 apps. You make profit since 2015, and you have 350 employees from more than 45 nations. This leads me to my first question. At what point did you, as a founder, lose track of who exactly works for your company?
Okay, yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. So I think, you know, when we started 7 years ago in Berlin, Pankow, in a very small flat, so it's just kind of the typical startup story, I would say. And obviously, if I look back at the last 7 years, so every year the company turned into a new kind of company, yeah. But coming back to your question, so the way we keep in touch, or I keep in touch with new employees, is basically we have a massive onboarding program, and we're going to talk about this later. So what we're doing within this program, one part of it is that there's an onboarding speech from myself. So I'm actually meeting everyone who's joining Adjust. So every month there's a batch of new people coming in, so between 10 to 30 people every month. And so I'm, going to meet with them, introduce them to the history of the company, talk about the vision, and so actually have the chance to really meet them. And beyond that, what we're also doing, we're doing two things. One is we're having a company retreat every year. Mm-hmm. So we're actually flying out this Sunday with the whole team, 350 people. To Portugal, and beyond that, we also have a Christmas week where we're flying everybody into Berlin for 1 week and spend some time together. Okay. I think the third piece of it is that we're obviously also traveling around a lot. So I just came back from Asia 2 weeks ago. So we met with customers in China and in Japan. And if we are there, obviously we also have the opportunity to talk to our team members over there. So that's kind of the way we try to keep in touch with all the employees. Okay, and you said before that alone in the last year you hired 150 people. What I thought about that is where and how do you find all these people in such a short time? Because I think recruiting is a big topic for many startups, and yeah, how did you do it? I mean, obviously recruiting is tough for everybody. But I think with the market that we are in, yeah, so mobile advertising is a pretty new market. I think it's around for probably 10 years, which is next to nothing compared to other markets. So when we got initial traction, probably back in 13, 14, when we got a lot of customers on board, we had actually the challenge, not also from a technical perspective to scale the platform, but also the challenge of how to keep our customer support alive, and how do we find enough people? Because there are a lot of, let's say, job descriptions or jobs out there now which haven't been there before. So for example, in our industry, most of our customers are guys they call user acquisition managers. So that's a pretty new function that hasn't been there before. And so we looked at it and we said, okay, look, there's no opportunity to find the right people because there's simply this job hasn't been there before. So what we did specifically in the account management space was we just looked for people who fitted our culture and had some, let's say, basic skills that would meet our expectations. And then we started to train them because we felt, okay, there are many smart people out there. They don't necessarily need to have the specific mobile knowledge, but we would be able to train them. And this was kind of the starting point of this whole education program that we've set up inside of the company. Okay, but
when you had to onboard and do all this with 150 people, the business as usual had to go on as well. So how do you make the onboarding process as efficient as it gets?
So we now have, we created a team. There are 6 people doing nothing else than education and onboarding. So for example, every new employee that's joining a Just needs to spend at least 3 weeks in the Berlin headquarters. And so they're going through a massive training program. So this program that we have developed for ourselves is called Atom. And in that program, there are multiple things in that. So there are videos, even you have to pass some tests to be able to do that. But we also seen a lot of success with that because we kind of compared how long does it took, for example, to get a new sales employee on board, and how long does it actually take until they're very becoming productive in terms of the company. And we compared something without the Atom setup and with the Atom setup. So let's say in software companies, it usually takes around 9 to 12 months until a new employee is really productive. And obviously, you know, the shorter you get this time frame, the better for the company, right? The economics just are getting better. So we managed to having our salespeople be productive after 6 months, so which is 50% less time than it usually takes. And that's why we also thought, okay, we rolling this out across the whole company. Yeah, so we started with account management, and we moved it to all the other departments, and even if you are a developer starting at the Just, you need to go through this course.
In the last year, you acquired 2 startups.
Yeah.
And did you also do this with the 2 teams that came to your original team?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we did. Yeah, of course. So last year we acquired 2 companies, one from San Francisco and the other one from Tel Aviv. And they are very different in the way they also how these founders run their business, and how do we integrate them. So the guys from San Francisco, for example, so we moved all of the whole team to Berlin. Yeah, so that was the process of the last 3 months.
So from San Francisco to Berlin.
San Francisco, Russia, from multiple locations, wherever these people worked for Acquired.io. So the whole team is now based in Berlin. Except for the founders, they're still in San Francisco. But also, one of the founders of this acquisition, Andre, he has now become our VP of partnerships. So he's now part of the management team. And I think we also obviously fully integrated him into the Adjust company. Where with Onboardify, it's the name of the other company that we acquired, it's a bit different because they were around 25 developers when we acquired them in Tel Aviv. And as you know, we spend a lot of our resources on cybersecurity, starting from fraud prevention to in-app bot detection and those kind of things. There's a massive market, and we obviously like to invest more in that space. So we thought it probably doesn't make sense to take the team and move them to Berlin. Because obviously there's also a shortage of, let's say, cybersecurity talent. And I think Israel has a pretty good reputation when it comes to cybersecurity. There are a lot of great startups in Israel spending time on this topic. So we thought, why don't we keep the Tel Aviv office and make that our cybersecurity R&D hub? And this is what we did. So they're kind of a separate entity still, but obviously we're connecting them into our technical platform, so that process is almost done. We just released our first joint product a couple of weeks ago, and we're rolling it out now into other markets. And and with Tel Aviv, for example, we're going to invest more money because we obviously like to add more people over there. Yeah, so that's very important for us.
But as was said before, you have people from 45 different nations, yeah, and in 15 different countries, and now from different companies. How do you make them feel like one team?
Okay, so I would say there's three things maybe. One is tools. I think the second thing is communication, and the last thing is really kind of face-to-face meetings. When it comes to tools, then I think the main tool that we're using is Slack. So we implemented that a couple of years ago, and since then it really has become an essential part of our company culture. Because, you know, with a company of that size, it's sometimes hard to implement new tools and so on, but it's now being used all over the world from every single Just employee. So I think one other thing that we also developed when it comes to tools is a tool that's called Mate. Yeah, so Mate is something that we have built ourselves. So we have 3 full-time developers working on that tool. And what it does is basically it aggregates all the information that we have in the company. So everything, like travel guidelines, company updates, emails, contact information, everything that is relating to the company, you'll find it there. So we put everything there, and that's something we have developed for ourselves. So that's kind of the basic setup when it comes to tools. And then if we think about communication, which is another important piece to keep everyone aligned, so we do a couple of things. One is I'm sending out a monthly email to all the employees, giving them an update on the performance of the company, new customers, new partners, new market developments. Then the second thing that we do is we also have quarterly meetings where people can dial in and participate there. Also have the opportunity to ask questions. Yeah? And I think the third thing, and we also touched base on that briefly, is that although we have all this technology and we have this communication path, I think in the end, we're still human beings, right? And the thing is that human beings obviously like to talk to each other. So I think we just thought about how can we support that and how can we make that happen? And what we do, for example, is we talked about it earlier. So on Sunday this week, we're flying the whole team to Portugal. Yeah, so this is a company retreat, and we started that, I think, 6 years ago. So the first retreat was obviously a little bit closer to Berlin because we didn't have any money. But now we're using, we invest actually a lot of money into that. So we're having 350 people flying into Portugal next week. We spend the whole week there. There will be a lot of workshops. There will be some company updates. We actually hired the full plane going from Berlin to Portugal to make that happen. And the other thing I mentioned earlier is that we also have the Christmas week where we're bringing everybody together. And I think one other piece that we have is we're having office exchange programs. So, for example, since we have all these different offices, it just makes sense if people say, look, why don't we work, let's say, 4 weeks from the Tokyo office? Yeah, and we had teams like the backend team or SDK team. So they're flying to Tokyo, and then they spend 4 weeks at the local office in Tokyo and working from there.
How many people are doing this, like changing their office?
Many. I think the problem is everybody likes to go to Tokyo. It's not a problem because it's a great thing. But also we had it with San Francisco. Tel Aviv is now new on the map, and let's see. What's your favorite office? It's hard to say. We just currently opened up our new Beijing office. So I just went there 2 weeks ago. So I think that's probably #1 at the moment, but we're working on some more offices, so that's going to change over the next couple of months, hopefully. Okay. And on your website, and you mentioned some of it before, you talk a lot about development and education programs for your employees. Do these count for all of your employees, or maybe are there some exceptions? What is about accountants or office managers? Okay, so the ATOM course I just mentioned earlier, right? So everybody has to go through that. No matter if he's an office manager, a developer, a sales manager, it doesn't matter. Everyone has to go through that because we really believe that people have to understand at least the basic mechanics of our business, and the basic technology that we're creating here, because it's really important, I guess, from our perspective.
So I just saw that we only have a couple more minutes. What I want to talk about in short with you is the big news you announced this morning. You raised 200 million euro. Congrats for
Thank
that.
you.
And can you just say some quick things about the background of this funding round?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, the company is profitable since 4 years. So that was always very important for us to build something that is kind of self-sustainable. But we've been approached by many investors, and we thought, okay, maybe let's have some conversations. And then I think the most important thing is, we're doing this now for 7 years, so we have, let's say, a lot of experience when it comes to building products, acquiring companies, onboarding many people. So I always say, we kind of created an engine, and the engine is running. And at some point, you ask yourself, why don't we put more gasoline on it? Why don't we make that even faster? Because chances that it's going to break, maybe, but less likely, because we learned so many lessons over the years, and we know actually how to run a business. We know how to internationalize markets, and so on there. So we've been through so many challenges that we kind of understand how to fuel the engine. And it was a very, easy thing to us to say, okay, the market out there, they're pretty good when it comes to funding. If we can find the right partners with, let's say, international experience, and also partners that have been through the process that we're going through multiple times, that would also help support our vision. And so yeah, we worked a lot on that for the last couple of months, and yeah, so here we are.
Okay. Will there be a big party today?
Not today. As I said, we're flying to Portugal. I think we're going to party over there.
Okay. So are there any more questions from the audience? Anyone? I don't think so, but no problem, because I have one more.
Sure.
2 weeks ago, or I think 2 or 3, there was the European Court said that in the future all companies have to track the time, the working time of their employees. What does this mean for an international company like yours?
I mean, as far as I understand it, it's something that's currently discussed, right? It's not being implemented.
No, the court already said it has to be done, but now the nations have to decide by themselves how it's done exactly.
Yeah, I think I think it's really crazy in a way. It's also very difficult because, I think one of the things that we have is we have a lot of trust in our employees, and what we really care about is output. So do they deliver on their job and so on? And now putting some measurements on top of it, it feels a bit unnatural to our company culture, and I would say pretty unnatural to many of the other startups out there. Yeah, and so I hope it doesn't go through. Because again, for example, if you have people traveling, I mean, how do you measure that? Or if they going home at 3 because they have to pick up their kid, and then they're going to work in the evening and answering some emails. How do you make that all happen, right? So there are obviously ways to make it happen, but I'm not a big fan of it.
Okay. Are there any tools in your company for tracking the time right now?
No.
Okay. Do you have trouble with people working too much, so you have to say, okay, stop?
Sure. So, I mean, one thing maybe I can also share that might be interesting. So, we had this unlimited vacation policy a couple of years ago, where we thought it's maybe a great idea, but also other companies implemented it, and they've been quite vocal about it. And we also looked at the days that people really took vacations. The problem was that on average, they just took like a week of vacation per year. And we thought, okay, that's exactly the opposite of what we wanted to achieve. So we changed it back. So we say, hey, you need to take at least 2 weeks of vacation every year. Yeah. Because, I mean, it just makes sense for us, yeah? Because we don't want to burn out people because we trained them. You know, we got them to a certain point and we're very, very happy that they're with the company, so we don't want them to burn out.
Okay, thank you very much for your insights. Unfortunately, we have to stop now,
Sure.
but thank you very much.
Thank you.